AM and 102.1 FM.
Bringing the governor inside your homes, hitting the issues that matter most to you. This is Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer Cox on stations throughout the state in partnership with the Utah Broadcasters Association.
Welcome to Direct Link with Governor Spencer J. Cox, joining us this month for a look at issues throughout the state with a special focus on issues in rural parts of the state. And we appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. If you have a comment or a question for Governor Cox, 855-399-6800. Again, that's 855-399-6800. I'm Jason Williams with KVNU Logan, and Governor Cox, welcome.
Hey, Jason, it's great to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to do this again, and again, appreciate that you take the time to do this, to focus on these issues that oftentimes don't get as much attention as maybe they should. Before we begin, and as we wait for the callers to line up here, it was quite a day on Capitol Hill today. Began in the earlier part of the day with an announcement of a veto on your part of House Bill 11, and then the announcement from Senate leadership and House leadership that there was interest in a veto override session, followed by an announcement from you that there would be a special session to address this specific bill and issue. Would you care to speak to all of this?
Sure, of course, Jason. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. So a lot of people have heard about the transgender sports bill. It's gotten a tremendous amount of attention. What most people don't know is some of the backstory about how we got here and what I would do, whether you agree with this or disagree with this. I would encourage everyone to please read my veto letter. You can find it on my website, and it's just what happened here was the bill was changed substantially in the last few minutes of the legislative session. And it did put in place a complete ban, which most people in Utah support. What they don't know is that it also excluded all of our schools from any liability protection that they would otherwise have from the state. And the Utah High School Athletic Association was never included in that bill to get some protection as well. So what it does is it sets up a lawsuit. There are 10 other states, maybe 11 now, that have done this, and there are lawsuits all across the country already going on. And so we know there's going to be a lawsuit. We know it's going to be a very expensive lawsuit because we've been able to see what's happening in other places. Idaho was the first state, and they're in the middle of their big lawsuit, and so the High School Athletic Association had told us last year and this year, if this bill ever passed, we need to make sure that we're covered, that the state will help pay for this. Otherwise, it will bankrupt us because they just got out of a big lawsuit. And so it passed in the last minute. The bill was changed, and everybody said, okay, we think this is good. And they passed it, and then they came back and said, oh, no, this isn't good. We're going to bankrupt the High School Athletic Association. We need to make some changes. And so that was one of the major reasons. And again, I would encourage people to read the letter that I vetoed. I also said, look, there's only one transgender female that is participating in girls sports in our state right now. It made sense to me to think, hey, if these other lawsuits are going, why don't we let them play out a little bit and let other states pay the millions of dollars, and where it's not impacting girls sports here in our state right now, let that play out. And so I talked to the legislature. They knew there was going to be a veto because we couldn't let this bill go in as it was because of the High School Athletic Association piece. And so I did veto it. And they are going to override that veto on Friday, and then I'll call them immediately into a special session. So at the same time, since they're already there, and that will allow them to make changes to the bill so that they actually can indemnify the High School Athletic Association, not bankrupt it, and then also any schools that get sued will also have some coverage there. And I know our schools and all of our athletic associations and coaches, they feel much better about that change.
I know in a special session like this, a lot of people are going to be weighing in, and it'll play out through that traditional legislative process. Is there a preferred outcome in your mind?
Well, the outcome has already been mostly agreed to by the legislature, and that is that they will go back in and make those changes. There's a funding piece that has to go along with this. I'm not sure how much money they're going to set aside to cover these lawsuits. I think I would still prefer to let other states pay for the lawsuits where there's not an impact right now. But I understand a lot of people feel very strongly with this, and in fact, there's been a tremendous amount of focus on the Penn swimmer at the collegiate level that has really dominated swimming, and the unfairness there. And I say in the letter that I agree with that is unfair, and that should not be allowed to happen. I also feel very I feel very strongly about these kids. I mentioned there's only one transgender female that's participating in sports, not dominating, not taking away any scholarships. There's three other transgender boys that are participating in boys athletics, and I worry we have such a high suicide rate with our transgender youth. And they're really struggling, and I hope we can send them a positive message and let them know how much we still care about them and we love them. But as far as the bill goes, there are the votes to override that. That was discussed, and those conversations have been had with all the legislators. But they agree with me, and by the way, several of them apologized to me for the way it changed at the last minute that night and how it put us in a bad situation, and really our schools and the High School Athletic Association in a bad situation. But at least we'll get to fix that part, and I think that's something that everyone should be able to support, fixing that piece.
Thank you, Governor. And again, for listeners out there, this is an open program. If you have a comment or a question for Governor Spencer Cox, 855-399-6800. And Governor, we do have our first caller on the line here. We have with us Kim from the Gunnison area, and she has a question about equalizing funding for kindergarten. Did I get that wrong, Bill?
Well, I'm a he, but that's okay.
Oh, Kim, go ahead. Sorry about that. You had a question about equalizing funding for kindergarten. Is that correct?
Well, no. Spencer, this is actually Kim, and I'm actually a man, but that's okay. Here's my question. It's difficult for rural school districts to raise money for capital improvements. If all K through 12 students are to be given an equal opportunity for an education, what has the governor's office and the legislature done to equalize funding?
Yeah, Kim,
question,
thank you.
Kim.
It's always great to talk to my friends from Sanpete County. I love those people. We had some students from Gunnison Valley High School that were up at the Capitol a couple of weeks ago, and I got to host them, and so I appreciate the question. Well, there's actually a lot that we're doing to equalize education. Now, it's important to understand for the people who are listening that education funding is different in every state, and especially here in Utah. In most places, almost all education funding comes from property taxes. The problem here in Utah is that the federal government owns about 70% of our state, and the federal government doesn't pay taxes. We get payments in lieu of taxes, but we joke that those are pennies in lieu of trillions. It's much less than we should be receiving. So it makes it very difficult. So in the state of Utah, we have dedicated income tax to also be used for education. And that income tax is divided up evenly, equalized between schools. And Utah has one of the top 5, if not the top. We're known as the most equalized funding because of that. But there are still big disparities because we do use some property taxes. Obviously, property taxes in affluent areas like Park City are going to be much higher than property taxes in places like Sanpete, and so it's almost impossible. And what Kim mentioned is the capital piece, which is even harder. If you need to build a new school in some place like Gunnison, or I was recently in Garfield County, and their schools like 50 or 60 years old, and they literally cannot bond enough to build a school with the tax base that they have. And so this session, we've been pushing to get a fund to help with that. And the legislature did approve that this year. We're very excited about that. I apologize, I don't have the exact numbers right now, but it is a fund that will be, that rural areas can participate in to help match what they can do with bonding to build some of these capital improvements that are necessary. So this was a huge deal, something I've been fighting for a long time, and we actually got it past this legislative session. So we'll be getting those numbers out. I'm still signing bills. People don't realize that. They think the legislative session is over. Everybody goes on vacation. All the legislators go wherever they're going. I don't get to go anywhere because I have 20 days to sign or veto all the bills, and that ends on Thursday. So we are working through that. Those bills, the budget bills, will be signed, I think, tomorrow, and then that money will be approved starting in the fiscal year in July. So I want to say it's about $50 million. It may be more than that, but we're really excited to get those numbers out.
You're listening to Direct Link with Governor Spencer Cox. Again, this is an open format. If you'd like to call with a comment or a question, 855-399-6800. Governor, you've made rural Utah a focus of your administration and a focus of everything you've kept a close eye on during the legislative session. Back to that legislative session, how do you feel when it comes to education funding and the planning for the future lawmakers did when it comes to education as it pertains to growth in rural Utah?
Yeah, this was a very, very good session for education and for education funding. We were able to get really historic numbers into the education fund. The legislature was very generous. The weighted pupil unit, the WPU, which I mentioned, is the way we divide up those dollars evenly amongst students in the state. A 6% increase there, which we've never seen anything like that. And then there were several other programs that got funded on top of that. And so that's great news. And again, especially great news for rural Utah. That's where our focus was, and low-income neighborhoods in urban Utah. Those two areas that need the most help. And so I'm very optimistic. I am worried. I will say this. I'm worried about our teachers. It's been a tough 2 years for teachers. They've certainly struggled through the pandemic, through some of the political and culture wars that are being fought in those areas. And I hear every day from teachers that they're just exhausted. It's a very tight labor market, and that it's tight if you're a business trying to find labor. There are lots of labor opportunities, and we've certainly heard from lots of teachers that have decided that they're going to find another career. And we need our teachers to stay. We have some of the best teachers in the world right here in the state of Utah, and I'm hoping that there will be significant increases coming their way. Ultimately, those increases are left to local school districts as they get the money. Then they decide how to apportion that. But there should be raises coming to our teachers, and I certainly hope that parents and students will reach out and let their teachers know how much that they appreciate them and what a great job they're doing.
855-399-6800 again, if you'd like to speak with Governor Spencer Cox. He's joining us for Direct Link, an hour-long event focusing on issues in the more rural parts of the state. And again, this is an open forum. So all questions are up for grabs. And Governor, we do have callers on the line and some more questions coming in here as well, but we do need to also take our first break. So one more time for listeners out there, Direct Link with Governor Spencer Cox continues right after this. 855-399-6800. We'll be back right after this.
Philharmonic and Choral Society and Cache Valley Arts bring you an Easter event unlike anything that's graced the stage in Logan ever before. March 25th and 26th at the Ellen Eccles Theater with cinematic music, Broadway-level talent, and a cast of over 100 exceptional musicians. King of Kings along with Lamb of God combine to give you an epic musical experience. This concert is a musical panorama of the life and mission of Jesus Christ, told by those who were there. Tickets are available at draperphilharmonic.org or casharts.org. AuthorizedAutomotive.org.
When looking for your next pre-owned vehicle, look to the name that Utah has trusted for their automotive needs for over 95 years. For generations, Murdoch Automotive has given Utah pre-owned car, truck, and SUV buyers a comfortable, no-pressure buying experience. At Murdoch, we've got the largest used vehicle inventory in the state with over 1,000 used vehicles to choose from. When you walk through our doors, you feel like family. At Murdoch Hyundai in Logan or online at murdochhyundailogan.com.
Call 866-628-2065 or see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 3/31/22.
Chronic pain gets in life's way. But now you can fight back with chronic strength using the VIM app from the Arthritis Foundation. You'll find tips and tools to help you manage your chronic pain, set achievable goals, and be a part of a community that offers support. With the Arthritis Foundation's free VIM app, you'll take back what chronic pain has taken away. Download VIM at arthritis.org/VIM. That's arthritis.org/VIM.
Sleep apnea is a common disorder and is linked to serious health problems, such as a risk of high blood pressure, heart attack, and stroke. With the proper information, you can find a restful night's sleep and a healthier life.
Learn more at wakeuptosleep.org or call 877-389-8868.
The latest news 24/7. News Talk KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Welcome back to Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer J. Cox. I'm Jason Williams, KVNU Logan, and this is an open forum. If anyone would like to join us with a comment or a question for Governor Cox, dial 855-399-6800. Again, throughout Utah, 855-399-6800. Governor, we have a question from a listener in the Uinta Basin area. And I'm not sure what the question is in reference to. It's not something I remember, but the question is, the Lieutenant Governor had said in a recent, I assume, a press conference related to COVID-19 and the pandemic that they were going to be looking into an uptick in deaths of 18 to 65-year-olds, non-COVID related deaths. Caller wants to know if there is a status update on that. Is that something you're familiar with?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I so appreciated the Lieutenant Governor pinch hitting for me a few weeks ago. She's actually in Israel right now on a trade mission, and so I'll send some warm thoughts her way. I was able to listen to part of that, and I do remember that there was a caller who had asked about that, and I think mentioned potentially a 40% increase in death rates among 40 to 60-year-olds or something like that. Our teams did go and look into that as was promised, and we couldn't find anything in the state of Utah that matched those numbers at all. There was a story they found that described an uptick in Indiana, but it was exclusively to Indiana, and so we've looked at it and we have not seen, including talking to insurance companies who monitor this stuff very, very closely to see if there was indeed a significant uptick outside of COVID, and they did not find anything like that. Now, what we are seeing across Utah and across the rest of the nation, of course, are the significant deaths related to COVID. But Utah did better than most states. We have the third or fourth lowest rate of death in the nation, and a lot of people think that's just because we're young. Even if you adjust for age, we still have the seventh lowest rate of death in the nation. But that's still 4,500, 4,600 now plus residents who have died, and our hearts break for those families. Certainly, we have seen the life expectancy of Americans decrease by close to 2 years over the past couple of years, in large part because of COVID, and that is true here in Utah as well. We certainly feel fortunate to be on the good side of things right now. We have the lowest hospitalization rates and the lowest COVID rates that we've had in a long time. So again, very, very happy that we're in a better place.
Always good news to see the direction we've been headed here in Utah for sure. And thanks again to Rodney for that question. Governor, the next question from a listener takes us back to the topic of education. And the question is along the lines of teacher pay, teacher salaries, or money in education in general. Caller points to other states, says in some states they pay teachers a lot more than here in Utah, and yet their education systems still struggle. Is this a solution in your mind? Well, the direct quote from the questioner is, will throwing money at education really improve things?
Well, the answer is no. Just throwing money at education doesn't necessarily improve education. Although I will say, especially in the case of teachers, that encouraging and attracting talent, it's just like any other place where you're hiring. And that is, if you want the best people, making sure that we pay them enough to be able to raise a family, at least, is critically important. And I hope people recognize that. Teachers, nobody's arguing that teachers need to be the top paid profession in the country. I'm sure teachers would love that, and certainly I would love to get them more. But if you cannot make a living, as it were, if you cannot provide for your family, and I have family members that are teachers, then you're not going to be a teacher. And then we lose some of the potential for the best and brightest. And I will say that all of the data shows that teachers make the biggest difference in the classroom. There are other things that make a difference too, right? Curriculum makes a difference. Technology makes a difference. All of those things. But if you have bad technology and bad curriculum and a good teacher, you will have good outcomes. If you have the best technology in the world and the best curriculum and the best, all of those things, the best supplies, and a bad teacher, you're going to have bad outcomes. And so I want things that will give us the best teachers. And that means that we help to train our teachers, we give them the resources they need, but it also means that we attract the best teachers and we keep the best teachers. And one way to do that is just to make sure that they're making enough to provide for their families.
Governor, a question sent in from our listeners here in Logan ahead of tonight's event, asking about the future of rural counties in general. And a caller said, even when it comes to rural counties, let me back up. Emailer said, when we talk about rural Utah, oftentimes we talk about rural Utah versus urban Utah, but there are also differences among rural Utah communities. And this listener points to Box Elder County, Cache County, and Rich County specifically as three counties with three sets of very different challenges headed forward. And how do you meet that, either from a public policy standpoint or from a long-term master plan standpoint? The caller would like to know.
Yeah, great email there. This is something I talk about often, and too many people, especially along the Wasatch Front, do exactly that. They say there's rural Utah and then there's not rural Utah, and that's kind of it. And they think that rural Utah is just one ubiquitous whole, and there are so many distinct and unique challenges in every county. And the way we do that is by coordinating closely with local leadership, and local leadership really matters. I was very fortunate to be on the city council and mayor of my small town of Fairview, town of 1,200 people. I was a county commissioner in Sanpete County of 28,000 residents there. And I knew the differences between Fairview and Mount Pleasant and the challenges that we had. And I knew the differences between Sanpete and Sevier County and the challenges that we had there. But what I did find and what I did understand is that many places in rural Utah struggle because we don't have access to the same resources. And specifically, they're talking about planning there and planning for the future. As I was traveling around, what I realized is, some places are really growing, but Salt Lake, Provo, Orem, American Fork, they've got teams of planners and attorneys and that can help and work through all of the legal issues that come with those types of growth. They have tons of employees, city employees that can work on the infrastructure pieces, and many of us don't have that. So what we've been trying to do in the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget is to bring in resources that can support these towns and these counties to help them be what they want to be as they grow up. not for us to tell them. What I always found when I was a mayor is there was this top-down approach. It was the governor or the legislature saying, "Hey, this is what we think every rural county should be. Here's a program, adopt it." I don't like that. What I like is, here are some resources. Now you come tell us what you want to do with those resources. Here's the stuff that you need, and that you want, and then you decide. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put together funding, so pots of money where people can apply for it to do what they want to do with it, planning resources, actual humans, capital, that people can come and say, "Hey, we need some help planning. We can't afford a full-time planner, but can we borrow yours for 8 hours or 24 hours, and you can help us figure out how to do this?" Those are the types of changes we're trying to make to really support what the local people want to do.
Governor, it's interesting as we get these calls to see them bouncing back and forth between two topics here, education and the pandemic. Our next caller, who we lost or hung up before we had a chance to invite them on air, had a question about natural immunity versus vaccines, and wants to know, has Utah conducted its own study into the effectiveness of both?
Yeah, we've looked at that. We try to look at the numbers. It gets a little trickier in trying to know who's had what variant, and then again, who's just had the vaccine versus who's had both. But as we look at that, there is no question that there is some natural immunity that comes from the virus, much like, or that comes from the vaccine, like the vaccine. There's also, like the vaccine, it appears to wane over time. So depending on how long ago you've had it, the longer it is, the less likely that the immunity will continue. Earlier variants didn't provide much immunity for the Omicron variant, but the good news is that the Omicron variant appears to supply really good immunity for the BA2 variant, which is the new one that's kind of going around, called stealth Omicron. And so it's really a mixed bag, but we did pass a bill this legislative session that I signed just today, that recognizes natural immunity as well in this COVID fight, and I think it's one of the important issues that hasn't gotten as much attention. What we did find is people who had a version of the virus and had been vaccinated actually had the highest levels of immunity of anyone out there, that combination. And so it is a combination. There is definitely some good immunity that comes from natural immunity.
You're listening again to Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer J. Cox, joining us here for this hour-long event. You're welcome to join us as well. It is an open format, so if you have a comment or a question for the governor, call 855-399-6800. And again, that is statewide, 855-399-6800. And Governor, along this same topic of COVID-19, recently you announced in a press conference alongside Lieutenant Governor and Director of the Utah Department of Health that Utah would begin the wind-down phase of the pandemic response while keeping some parts active ongoing for potential outbreaks. How has that process gone? Has the winding down, I believe, started this month and continues, but some parts will be left in place indefinitely, right?
Yeah, so we've learned a lot through COVID, and really grateful for our team. We were the first or second state in the nation to announce that wind down process, and I think it's the right process. We have an incredible medical facilities, incredible medical teams here in the state of Utah, great infrastructure, and to start treating COVID like we treat other diseases. So now, when you get sick, instead of going to a COVID testing place, you'll go to your doctor, and your doctor will run a battery of tests. They'll test you for the flu. They'll test you for COVID. They'll test you for those types of respiratory viruses, like we've always done in the past, and then they'll determine how to treat that virus. And so that is happening. We announced that March 31st would be the target date for that. I got an update yesterday from our team, and they are on target for that March 31st wind down. So we're very excited about that. But we will continue to monitor what's happening out there. Those are some of the lessons that we learned. We have some surveillance ability to monitor wastewater. We test wastewater to see if COVID is going up or down. We're able to, when people do go to the emergency room and get these tests from their doctors, those are reported. They've always been reported. So we watch the flu and see when it's rising or going down, and RSV is another one of those. By the way, I don't think this has been announced anywhere, but this last week we had more cases of the flu than we had COVID for the first time in 2 years. So interesting to see how that's really changed, and so those pieces will continue. And then if we do start to see things rising, or what will more likely happen is, like with Omicron, where we saw it happening in South Africa and then in the UK and then in Europe, then we can start ramping back up if we think that this is something that could overwhelm our medical facilities. We can start ramping things back up. We will also be storing supplies, so we'll have testing supplies on hand. We'll rotate through those with our hospital association and others. But that's the idea. The idea is to be ready. The idea is to be as prepared as possible, but we can't keep going at this high level when we don't have a need for it, as we do not right now. So trying to become more nimble, but really start treating this virus like we do every other virus.
Great questions coming in from all of the listeners tonight. Please join us statewide if you have a comment or a question for the governor tonight. 855-399-6800. We'll be back with more of Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer Cox right after this.
I'm Bill Walter, KVNU News. The Utah Highway Patrol has released the identity of a 22-year-old man arrested Sunday night, suspected of shooting at another vehicle on I-15 and then leading law enforcement on a chase through northern Utah. UHP Sergeant Cameron Roden said Dakota Anderson was arrested after the incident and later booked into the Weber County Jail. Just before 5 p.m., a driver on northbound I-15 in Weber County called 911, claiming that Anderson had shot at his vehicle at least 3 times. Troopers said it appeared to be some sort of road rage incident, and the vehicle he was shooting at was not hit. Anderson's vehicle was later spotted on US 8991 in Box Elder County, heading towards Cache County. Law enforcement tried to pull the car over, but he allegedly would not stop, and troopers began a pursuit. As Anderson was coming out of Sardine Canyon near Wellsville, troopers were able to set out spike strips, which the vehicle ran over, causing it to lose control and roll. Anderson got out of the vehicle and was taken into custody, and officials say that he suffered minor injuries. Lawmakers in the Idaho House have approved legislation to boost reading skills among young students with optional full-day kindergarten. The House voted 40-29 on Monday to give school districts the option of full-day kindergarten by using $73 million in state literacy intervention money. The legislation removes any ambiguity that the money can be used for full-day kindergarten. Mostly clear tonight, low near 20, sunny mid-50s tomorrow, upper 50s on Thursday. On Friday, looking at upper 60s for the high. You can always get more news at CacheValleyDaily.com.
Ultimate power, ultimate potential. Now everyone can discover that Ski-Doo feeling with the new 2023 Ski-Doo Deep Snow Sleds. Available with the all-new Rev Gen 5 platform and Turbo R engine, bringing you the best power-to-weight ratio in the game. Plus, discover a whole new range of models for every rider, including the new Summit Neo Plus, built ready for your first time. The only question we have, who's coming for a ride? Pre-order yours today and discover that Ski-Doo feeling. Restrictions apply. Customer offers vary based on creditworthiness. See dealer for details.
Mama, what does the chicken say?
Chicken. Oh, okay.
And wolf?
Oh, a wolf.
Ooh! What about the tiny dog? Cat? Owl?
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Dolphin? What does the turkey say? Whale?
Yeah, whale sound.
Do the giraffe.
Giraffe, really? Okay. Giraffe. Giraffe.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff. like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right.
Visit NHTSA.gov/
the right seat.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Our most vulnerable veterans are isolated at hospitals. And during their greatest time of need, their loved ones can have little or no contact with them. Imagine having to shelter in place forever. Learn how you can help at healvets.org. Help Heal Veterans with the support of citizens like you is making things better together. Learn more at healvets.org. This message is furnished by Help Heal Veterans, a not-for-profit organization.
Breaking news, stimulating talk is what we do. KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Welcome back to Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer Cox. I'm Jason Williams of KVNU Logan, inviting everyone to join us. This is an open format. If you have a comment or a question statewide, dial 855-399-6800. And Governor, through that short break, we did have callers lining up here to chat with you tonight. And first up for Governor Cox is Ben from South Jordan. Ben, you have a question regarding Russia, China, and cyber attacks on even Utah.
Yeah, how you doing, Governor Cox?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Hey, good. Actually, can I change my question? I really thought about it, and I wanted to ask a more relevant question about Florida's governor, and what do you think about that new bill that he passed? And do you have, what's your inclination to do you want to pass one similar to limiting or, kind of protecting children about sex education in kindergarten and first grade and, the younger kids? What do you think what are your thoughts or positions about that?
Yeah. No, thank you. Both are great questions. I don't like cyber attacks on us. By the way, I will mention that we receive every day basically over 1 million attempts on our cyber network. Just incredible. Most of those do come from Russia, China, third-party actors outside of the United States. So we have an incredible team that is working around the clock to protect our networks and do everything we can. On that issue, I have to admit I've been so involved in our legislative session. I have 513 bills that I'm working on and signing. What I believe I know about that bill is that there were some changes made. It had some problems early on, but probably ended up in a little better position. And sorry, I had Anne Murray playing over the top of me there for just a second. But what I do think is really important, and what we believe here in the state of Utah, is that sexuality is not something that should be taught in early grades. We have laws in place as kids age and at appropriate times when those things can be discussed, and always with parental permission and with parents involved in the process to really understand what it is that's being taught, and so that they can have those types of conversations with their kids and really be involved with their kids in having those conversations. So again, not knowing all of the contours of the bill, I do think it's important that whether it's human sexuality or homosexuality or whatever, that we talk about those at age appropriate levels and only with parental involvement and parental understanding.
Thank you, Ben, for the question. Next up for you, Governor, a question from Tim out of Hurricane, Utah. Has a question about gas prices, wants to know if the state can do anything to alleviate the price. Oh, we lost Tim.
Well, I can certainly answer the question, though, Tim. Thanks for calling in, and thanks for asking the question. We like several states have been looking at the possibility of eliminating or reducing the gas tax that people pay at the pump, about 30 cents per gallon, somewhere in there. The difference between Utah and other states is the way we fund things. I mentioned earlier in these conversations, an earlier question, that our income tax goes towards education. And because we have these specific buckets of where we can spend money, it makes it a little more complicated. In fact, it makes it a lot more complicated for Utah to do something like that. Normally, a governor could just declare an emergency and say, we're eliminating the gas tax, and I can use other funds to pay for the things that we need to pay for there. I don't have that option as a governor here in the state of Utah. In fact, the gas tax goes directly to fund UDOT employees. And so if I were to eliminate the gas tax, I would also have to lay off UDOT employees. And those employees are really important for, hopefully we'll get some more snow. They push snow, they fill potholes, they make sure that our roads are operational, all of the things that we need. And so I can't just take some surplus from somewhere else. So this would take an act of the legislature. And we've had that conversation. We are going to be meeting over the next week with everyone who's involved in the process here in the state of Utah, in the petroleum process, from those who extract petroleum from the ground, those who transport it, those who refine it, and the gas stations where it's delivered, to see what we can do to lower that price at any or every level of that process. And the hope is that working together, we'll be able to find ways to decrease the price of gasoline. Now, I've been very vocal. I sent a letter to President Biden. I think they've made a huge mistake when it comes to their policies around energy development, especially here in the state of Utah. We need to do more, and we need to do better. And we have the ability to do that. It's really interesting. The leasing that happens on public lands, where most of our gas extraction, natural gas and oil extraction comes from, even during the Obama administration, where it was much less, there were still hundreds of leases that were approved. And during the Biden administration, we've had 0 leases approved so far. Now, there is the possibility, we've heard that they will start to look at leasing again, but it is very frustrating. And by the way, it is directly resulting in higher gas prices. This was happening before the Ukrainian invasion, and it was well on its way up. Now, no question that the invasion of Ukraine has made it far worse, and Vladimir Putin is directly responsible for that. But there are things that we can do to help us and to provide resources for Europe, so they're not beholden to Russia. This is about national security and international security, and we should be smarter about it on our end.
Thank you, Governor. And again, thank you for being a part of this event, bringing a special spotlight on rural Utah issues in a regular event like this is an opportunity for everyone here in Cache Valley, southern Utah, eastern, western sides of the state, wherever you are. Join us. Ask a question or a comment of the governor. Statewide, dial 855-399-6800. Again, statewide, 855-399-6800. Governor, a question for me while we're in between callers here. We had an interesting experience on our show recently where we spoke first hour about this $40 million set aside by the legislature for restoration of the Great Salt Lake, an effort that everyone should be able to get behind. And second hour, we spoke with a representative of our own water district here in Cache Valley who said, we're nervous about that. $40 million could go a long ways to helping or hurting agricultural water use and things like that. Our own planning here in Cache Valley. As a statewide representative in that legislative process, as governor, how do you thread that needle, or can we thread that needle? Competing interests.
Yeah, there's, we always say in Sanpete that, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, and I think that's certainly the case. When you have a limited resource, a resource that is so precious, there will always be competing interests. And it's something that we want to work with all stakeholders on. I do believe that there are opportunities for all of us to work together to do better, and that's why I'm so excited for what happened this legislative session. It really, I think, got people's attention this past year. The drought that we have been in and are still in. I will note that some of the research that came out of, I believe it was UCLA recently, that noted going back and looking at historical data in tree rings and the way that they're able to look at the growth of those trees in different states, and specifically in the West, that this is the worst 20-year drought we've had since the year 800. So the worst drought in 1,200 years. So not only are we dealing with a global pandemic, but the worst drought in over 1,000 years. And that means we have to we all have a part to play in this. I'm a farmer. Nobody cares more about water for agriculture than me. We've been fighting this my whole life. We're still working on a reservoir that was promised us 90 years ago. My grandfather was working on it, and we're still fighting with our dear, lovely friends in Carbon County about getting that water to our side of the mountain. So I understand that, but what we are doing here is prioritizing. By the way, we're not taking anybody's water rights away. That $40 million will go to be able to acquire water rights in the market. We're not using the heavy hand of government anywhere to do that. But we also passed more water conservation legislation than the rest of our history combined. It was an incredible session, and people are getting serious about that, and the ag community is getting serious about it. We also passed millions and millions of dollars. I don't remember the exact number, but a significant amount of money that will be used for optimization in agriculture, because still about 80% of our water is used in agriculture, where it should be. By the way, food is just as important as water, and we need water to grow food. That's how this works. But we know that there are new technologies out there to improve and enhance yields using less water. So if we can improve outcomes and use less water, that's a win for everyone and frees up water for other things. And so I am so excited that we will be able to use that money to help our farmers to save water, which will save them money. And it really is a win all the way around. We also passed a significant amount of money for secondary water metering. And the reason that that's important is that we found that in many places in Utah, we don't meter the water that we use for our yards and outside use. And so it's hard to understand the cost of that for sure. And how that's going to work. So we funded this, and what we found is just by putting a meter on, people decrease their use by 20 to 30%. Even if you're not charging anymore, nothing else changes. Just by having that meter in place, we just get more thoughtful. We don't leave the hose on as much, knowing that we're measuring how much water is being used. And so we think that that's going to make a significant difference as well. So if we want a place for our kids and grandkids to be able to live, we're going to have to really work together to make sure there's enough water for them.
Thank you again, Governor Cox. One final break to get to here, but time enough for a call or two on the other side. If you'd like to join us here on Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer Cox, dial statewide 855-399-6800, and we'll be back right after this.
March is finally here, and you know what that means. Yep, it's Truck Month at Heritage Ram. And all month long at Heritage, you can get exclusive Ram Truck Month deals, like 0% APR for 72 months on a 2022 Ram 1500 Bighorn models. There's never been a better time to find yourself behind the wheel of the legendary Ram truck. Find out why this award-winning lineup of Ram trucks is the toughest and most capable ever. Come on in and see your friends at Heritage Ram, your hometown dealer with the biggest deals.
I'm Larry Gelwicks, the getaway guru for Morris Columbus Travel and Delta Vacations. Run away to the sunny beaches of Hawaii, Mexico, and the Caribbean with double discounts. You get a guaranteed air and hotel discount. Then we take that already discounted rate and drop it up to an additional $350 per booking. For the best travel deals on the planet, call Morris Columbus Travel.
Come on and get away, Morris Columbus.
Hi, I'm EJ Williams for American Humane. For thousands of years, dogs have been our best friends in our worst times. Today, we're also learning that our best friends, millions of whom are abandoned each year, are often the best medicine when people are facing obstacles. To help both people and animals, organizations like American Humane have been working to harness the healing power of the human-animal bond, finding animals in need of forever homes and training them as a life-saving service and therapy dogs to help our veterans, the elderly, and children overcome the daily obstacles of life. In this way, the rescued can become the rescuers. To find out how you can help give animals and the people they help a new leash on life, please visit AmericanHumane.org.
The newsmakers, the stories. Get it all here. News Talk KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Welcome back to KVN News. Excuse me. Welcome back to Direct Link with, I knew I would do that eventually. Welcome back to Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer Cox, a statewide event. So again, you can join us statewide 855-399-6800. We are short on time here and have to wrap up in just about 3 minutes. So we'll jump right back in here with Governor Cox to our next caller. On the line, Governor, we have Deborah with a question about, I believe, ESG scores. Is Deborah there? Did we lose Deborah? Okay. Never mind.
Well, I can comment quickly if Deborah's still listening out in Vernal. Deborah, thank you. We've been getting a lot of questions about ESG scores, and it is something that I am concerned about and share those concerns, Deborah. For those that don't know, ESG scores, that stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance, and it's this idea that that corporations or capital markets will evaluate companies on behalf of either social goals or environmental goals and give scores out there, and that score will help determine whether or not companies, whether or not banks will lend or capital markets will lend to those companies. And the problem I have, look, I believe in the free market, and I believe that markets should be able to decide everything. If you decide that you want to support a company because they share your environmental goals or they share your social goals, I have no problem with that. The problem I have is when we're giving just a score to a company, that gives enormous power for whoever gets to decide how those scores are made, and the scores in and of themselves can manipulate markets and change things. And so I'm very concerned about who gets to make those rules and who decides what those scores are, and that we just become more polarized. Politics is kind of infiltrating everything we do, and I don't think that that's healthy. And so I'm definitely worried about ESG scores. Let the market decide. Tell people what you stand for. That's fine. Your customers can decide. But let's be careful putting a score on something that can be manipulated and that we may not understand.
Great calls tonight. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and thanks most of all to you, Governor Cox, for taking the time to do this on a regular basis. Again, Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer Cox is a town hall style event with a focus on rural issues. So I hope you'll join us for the next one. Keep an eye out for that. And again, thanks to all of our listeners, all of our callers, to Governor Cox and his staff, to all of our partners throughout the state, rebroadcasting this and more. It's a pleasure to be a part of this. You've been listening to Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer Cox.
You've been listening to Direct Link with Utah Governor Spencer Cox on stations throughout the state in partnership with the Utah Broadcasters Association. Tune into this station every other month for Direct Link.
Well, fans, it's the final play of the game. Home team's down by 1 point with 10 seconds on the clock. Johnson's looking for the open inbounds pass. He gets it to Dawson, and he breaks free. He's driving for a quick layup, and what? He stopped mid-drive. What's he doing? Insane! He just quit playing.
If you got your first vaccinations for COVID-19, don't stop there. Visit coronavirus.utah.gov to schedule your booster.
Can you imagine what it would be like if you only had one option to choose from when buying a new car? Or while grocery shopping, you could only choose one cereal? Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Hi, this is Matt Robbins with Quality First Insurance. This may be the problem with your insurance. You're settling for one company's rates with no other options available. Auto Owners Insurance and Quality First will give you options. Quality First Insurance, 752-0101. For more information, go to q1ins.com.
When it's happening in Washington, when it's happening on Wall Street.
That's the reason why we're going to continue, because